Hello again, Stoveminders, young and old. Here we are, late January, just about a month away from the first spring training games, and mere weeks away from pitchers and catchers reporting. We're almost done. The stove is almost closed. But there's still a few big names left unsigned, and one of those names signed this past week. Talking about Marcell Ozuna landing a 1-year, $18 million contract to go to Atlanta and become a Brave. The fact Ozuna got a 1-year deal I thought was a little curious because reports coming out now, originally I thought that was because Ozuna's numbers do come with a bit of inconsistency. There is some uncertainty what you're going to get from him on a year-to-year basis offensively, and then defensively, while Ozuna is a former Gold Glover, he has had some shoulder ailments in his throwing arm, and his calling card as an outfielder is his arm strength. And so that has led to a decline, at least a little bit, in his defensive metrics. However, reports have come out since then that Ozuna had 3-year and 4-year offers on the table, yet he ended up taking a contract that was almost equal in value to the qualifying offer he had received from the Cardinals at the start of the winter. Just $200,000 more that he got in free agency than he would have received staying in St. Louis. Maybe he just wanted out, but I'm not even sure if that's the case because the Cardinals were one of two teams that were in on Ozuna for most of the winter. The other team being the Texas Rangers, which shouldn't be a surprise anymore. They've been very prolific this offseason without exactly making a lot of big moves. But hey, what about the Atlanta Braves, the team that actually signed him? Well, the Braves saw Josh Donaldson go over to Minnesota last week, and they're probably thinking, well, that's a pretty big hole in the lineup to fill. And so they shifted attention to Ozuna, and they managed to get him. And I'd say it's a pretty good move for them. But let's backtrack a little, because I wanted to talk about how Ozuna is not exactly a known commodity despite having 7 years of big league experience under his belt. And I think the best way to illustrate this is by talking about his batting average and his OPS on a year-by-year basis. In his first 4 years in the bigs, all with the Marlins, he finished the year batting between .259 and .269. Very precise, but his OPS fluctuated, being either .693 or .691 or .772 and .773. Well, after that came 2017, where Ozuna busted out in a big way. Gold Glove, Silver Slugger, his second All-Star nomination, and received some down-ballot MVP votes. He finished that year batting .312 with an OPS of .924, and the subsequent winter, Derek Jeter managed to get a big haul for him as part of the rebuild, shipping Ozuna over to St. Louis. His first season with the Cardinals, Ozuna hit .280 with an OPS of .758, and then last year, they hit .241, but managed an OPS of .800. It's been kind of a weird career for Ozuna. What's the deal here? Well, for last season, despite having his lowest batting average for a season in his career so far, he did recuperate that with a very high walk rate, relatively speaking, and he managed to hit 29 home runs with 53 extra base hits overall in 130 games. And he set a career high in stolen bases with 12, interestingly enough. Regardless, for Ozuna, let's take it back to a career perspective. 7 years, .272 hitter, .329 on base, .455 slugger, and a .112 OPS plus. I say Ozuna is a good hitter. He's almost guaranteed, to hit somewhere in the .260 to .270 range. He'll get you 20-plus home runs, as he's had for 4 straight seasons, and he'll get you some doubles and such. He does strike out a bit, but hey, what can you say? I think a potential reason why Ozuna turned down those longer deals were because he was looking for a higher value. and maybe $18 million a year was the highest that he was getting on the table. And in that case, this makes this a show-me deal where Ozuna's going to go out there and try to put together another great season, maybe get his third All-Star nomination, maybe add something else to the cupboard, and then walk away next winter with an even better contract. All very possible. The guy's just 29. He's got some sting left in the tank for sure. What this means for the Braves is Ozuna will be a regular in the lineup, playing out of left field. There will be a bit of a rotation in the rest of the outfield. I think the most common arrangement will see Ronald Acuna in right and Ender Inciarte, who is their best defensive option in the outfield, playing center. But you could also see Acuna in center, and then Nick Markakis getting time in right field, maybe even Adam Duvall. And that means third base, now open, will go to Austin Riley, coming off a not very good rookie season, but he was previously one of their higher-ranked prospects. And Riley, who's played mostly outfield in the majors because of Donaldson, however, he was a third baseman in the minors. That all makes sense. And a good addition to a lineup that's already pretty good. Freeman, Acuna, Albies, now Ozuna. All in all, a good signing for Atlanta. Maybe not an exact recuperation of losing Donaldson, who is an excellent all-around player, but a very good bat nonetheless. Even in his down years, he manages to do something. He's never really had a bad year. So Braves fans should be okay with at least having him for 1 year. And Atlanta wasn't done there yet. They swung a minor league deal, one of many minor league deals that went down this past week, to acquire right-hander Felix Hernandez. Yes, King Felix is heading down south. This wouldn't be notable at all if it wasn't for the name. Y'all know Felix Hernandez, but he has had a precipitous decline as a starter. The last 3 seasons have just been bad, and they're just getting worse. Last year with the Mariners, 71-plus innings, ERA and FIP both in the 6 range, whip above 1.5, strikeout to walk ratio about 7-3. His velocity on his fastball is down to 90 miles per hour. He's getting a very high opposing exit velocity. What's left for Hernandez? Well, he's 33 years old. It'd be weird for him to retire. I think he can at least step up on the mound and throw some balls, but whether or not he could be effective is, of course, a much bigger question. He's potentially a long reliever or a swingman option. The Braves' rotation does have a little bit of uncertainty down that number 5, maybe number 4 spot. Will Sean Newcomb be back in the rotation, or will he be kept in the bullpen? What about some of these other young arms they have lying around? Maybe Hernandez will see a start here and there, but I think for the most part, if he makes the Major League roster, we'll see King Felix coming out of the pen. And maybe that'll be better for him. Maybe the lowered workload will translate to better results. We'll have to see. Intriguing nonetheless for the Braves. But the NL East as a whole was pretty active. In particular, thanks to the Philadelphia Phillies, who swung 4 acquisitions this past week, 3 of them minor league deals, and 2 of them to pitchers who didn't pitch at all at the big league level in 2019. One of them hasn't pitched since 2017. That is the most Philadelphia pair of signings that I could conceive of. So, especially regarding their bullpen, which wasn't exactly a strong suit for them either. And I know there was a lot of disappointment around that Phillies team, but their bullpen was very thin to begin with, and having David Robertson just torpedo himself performance-wise and then health-wise was not super encouraging either. So who did they sign to bring reinforcements? Well, you might remember these names because they were relevant about 5-6 years ago. I'm talking about Bud Norris and Drew Storen. Let's start with Norris, who had somehow an even more disappointing 2019 than the Phillies. Why? Well, he had a couple chances to crack a roster, and in both cases, the team that signed him concluded that Norris wasn't ready. His arm strength wasn't there. He wasn't quite pitching at the sort of level that you'd want a big league pitcher to be pitching at, whether that was the Blue Jays who signed him into spring training or the Nationals who signed him later on. None of them were confident in Bud Norris's ability to actually pitch, which is sad. Why? Because his last 2 years, 2017 and 2018, were, as far as Bud Norris goes, actually kind of good. Norris threw mostly in relief in those 2 seasons, which is in contrast to the bulk of his career where he was mostly a starter, not a successful starter. So when he moved to the pen, and this was with the Angels and Cardinals, he threw over 119 innings in those 2 seasons, had an ERA and FIP both in the 390s, 2 numbers that are higher than career average, as well as his strikeouts. He had 141 punch-outs in those 119 innings, and just 48 walks. Those are good numbers. Maybe not great, but better than what he was doing as a starter. Norris will be 35 years old at the start of the next season, but I'm at least slightly encouraged. I don't know what was going on with him last year, but if he can come back and work out of the pen in the way he was doing just before whatever happened last winter, then I think the Phillies will be okay with that. An even bigger question mark looms over Drew Storen, another right-hander who I mentioned hasn't pitched since 2017. Why? Tommy John. Oh, Tommy John. Well, Storen was great earlier in his career. You may remember he was the Nationals closer. Was very good for a few years. Started to unravel in late 2015, lost his closing job. 2016 was pretty and then Tommy John missed a few years. My main takeaway was the fact that he was kind of starting to decline even before the surgery. He did pitch in 2019 in Double-A with the Royals. He had 10 plus innings, did not do very well at all. It was terrible. So we'll see how that works out for the Phillies. But just to be safe, Philadelphia did sign an arm that is somewhat reliable. I'm talking about Francisco Liriano, left-hander, coming in on a 1-year, $1.5 million deal, and he can pretty well double that salary with incentives. Liriano, he's been around. 36 years old, 14-year veteran. He's on to his 7th big league team. Last year in Pittsburgh, Liriano, who has been a starter for most but not all of his career, worked exclusively out of the bullpen through 70 innings, 3.47 ERA, although with a 4.53 FIP, 1.357 WHIP, strikeout to walk ratio 8.1 to 4.5. Not exactly great, but that's pretty much what you can expect from Liriano. This guy has been consistently okay. He's been durable. He has plenty of starting experience, but is also comfortable working out of the pen. 14-year career, talking 99 ERA plus, 9 to 4 strikeout to walk ratio, 3.88 FIP, 4.15 ERA, 1.359 WHIP. Hey, not a bad ad. Not a bad ad for a team that's kind of scrounging at the bottom of the barrel. When you're signing guys like Bud Norris and Drew Storen, you're a little desperate just to add somebody to the pitching staff. So for the Phillies to go and get Francisco Liriano, honestly, not a terrible thing. I do think his durability will come into play, especially considering the fact that Zach Wheeler and Jake Arrieta are 2 of the 3 best pitchers in that rotation. And they weren't done there yet. No, the Phillies also added a position player on a minor league deal. I'm talking about Neil Walker, the 34-year-old infielder coming in after spending last season in Miami, where he actually did all right. He did somewhat close to his career numbers in terms of, for instance, batting average, 261 compared to his 11-year career, 267, 344 on base, a bit higher than his career average, and slugging 395 actually down from his career average. Now, I'm talking career average. Walker is kind of fallen off from his more productive days in Pittsburgh and with the Mets. 2018 was really bad for him, for instance, so there's clearly a reason why he hasn't been as well regarded enough to get a major league deal. But he can clearly still hit to some degree. He gets a lot of walks. He's a good on-base guy. He'll probably find his way around the infield somehow with all the shuffling the Phillies did this past offseason, non-tendering Franco and Hernandez, and then also sending Herrera down to the minors. Interestingly enough, there seems to be a lot of former Pirates on this Phillies team. McCutchen, Josh Harrison, who they signed to a minor league deal with whom Neil Walker's probably going to compete to get some of these backup infield spots. Walker himself, and then Francisco Liriano. So, I don't know what's going on. Just shifting the center of gravity in Pennsylvania eastward. Not a bad depth move, signing Neil Walker. And I've already talked about their pitchers. So, Phillies staying active. And that one was not the only NL East team to do things. I'm talking about the Mets, the Metis. What the fuck were they doing? Well, they got a new manager. Yeah, they had to let Carlos Beltran go for being a cheater. And they dished out a contract to Luis Rojas, 2 years plus a couple of options to be the Mets skipper. Who is Luis Rojas and why him? Well, he's been with the Mets organization since 2007. The 38-year-old finally made it to the big league level last year after spending all those years, or decade plus, in the Mets farm system. He served as their quality control coach this past season, and was also interviewed when the Mets were initially hiring a manager and was eventually passed over for Beltran. So clearly the Mets they're obviously familiar with the guy. They obviously respect him. And when you're in this kind of weird situation where you have to choose a new manager on a short-term notice, you might as well choose a guy who knows the deal. He knows what's up. He knows some of the players. As I mentioned, Rojas coached and even managed in the minors, so probably knows some of these guys like Pete Alonso or Jeff McNeil. An interesting spot for your first big league gig. The Mets team's got a few question marks floating around, but we'll see what Luis Rojas does. He's the son of Felipe Alou and half-brother of Moises Alou, so baseball's in his blood. I don't know, you could do worse as far as short-term hires for managers. And the Mets got a minor league deal to bring back catcher Rene Rivera. A true journeyman, Rivera, 36 years old now. He's played for 8 teams in 11 seasons, and most of all, he's played with the Mets. In 2 stints, in fact. Played with them from 2016 to 2017, and then last year, while he spent most of the season in AAA, he appeared in 9 games at the major league level for the Mets. Down in AAA, he hit .254 with an .820 OPS, managed 25 home runs, which is far above what he's accomplished in the major leagues, where in his 11-year career, he slashed .221, .272, .354. Not very good on that front, but he is considered an above-average catcher defensively. 25 defensive runs saved in 11 seasons and a 36% career caught stealing rate. He can throw guys out. That's great. Rivera will probably be Wilson Ramos' backup. Now with Travis d'Arnaud gone, that door is open. They have Thomas Nido on the roster as well, but he's even younger than Rivera and an even worse hitter. And if anything, Rivera has been cited for having good chemistry with Noah Syndergaard, so he'll at least be somebody's personal catcher. Let's shift gears over to the Midwest. The Royals brought back Alex Gordon on a 1-year, $4 million deal. I love this. Gordon, who will be turning 36 years old next season, has spent his whole career professionally, from draft day to 2-day, with the Royals organization. 13-year veteran, a lifelong Royal, you gotta love it. And Gordon's days as a force of the plate are behind him. In the last 4 seasons, he has slashed .237, .320, and just .366. So, I know it doesn't matter much for the rebuilding Royals, but the guy can't really hit much anymore. However, Gordon is still a very good defensive player. He's earned a Gold Glove in 3 straight seasons and has 7 total in his career. And if you want to look for a silver lining, he is coming off his best season offensively since 2015. And he led the American League in hit by pitches with 19, so no matter what, he's getting on base. Great stuff. Feel good move. Yeah, the Royals are rebuilding. What does it matter? But to have somebody who's like just such a core part of the franchise like Gordon to stick around for another year, yeah, it's nice. It's nice. Very Royals move to make. And the Cardinals decided also to bring somebody back. I'm talking about catcher Matt Wieters on a 1-year, $2 million deal with $1 million in incentives. Wieters, the 33-year-old switch-hitting catcher, played 67 games for the Cards last season, hit just .214 with a .268 on base. Not good. And this is a guy who's hitting the .230 range in the last 3 seasons. Still has some power, but yeah, he's not going to give you much of the plate. What more can you want out of a backup catcher, I guess? Well, his defense is in decline. They can still throw runners out at an above-average clip, but yeah, Wieters, this is not Baltimore Wieters. Main reason he's sticking around is to, I guess, add some continuity and give catcher Andrew Knizner, Andrew Knizner. Giving him some more time to develop. The kid's just 24, will be turning 25. Has very limited big league experience, but he's supposed to be Yadier Molina's successor down the line, so giving him some more time. And the Blue Jays, I'm not sure why, but they added another infielder, and it's Joe Panik, who isn't really that bad. So I don't know what's going on there. Anyway, Joe Panik, second baseman for the most part, coming in on a minors deal, where if he makes the big league roster, he could earn a bit under $3 million. The Blue Jays do have pretty good infield depth. That's where they have the highest concentration of prospects, such as Kevon Biggio, who was their main second baseman last year. But there's the potential to move Biggio to corner outfield, where he has some experience, and where all in all the Jays outfield is not as intriguing. So that could be a window of opportunity for Panik, who's coming off a bit of a down year in 2019, that he split between his longtime club, the Giants, and the Mets. And it was a tale of two halves in that case. He hit about .244 with the Giants, and then after his trade hit .315 with the Mets. Panik's never been a power hitter, but he has a great strikeout-to-walk ratio. He has hit well before. His defense has declined. So maybe he's at the stage of his career where this 29-year-old is not exactly going to be an everyday second baseman. But as I mentioned, the Jays, they got a bit of depth around the infield, so I guess it does kind of make sense. I feel like he'll get traded again. That about wraps it up for the majors at large. So lots of minor league deals, some more intriguing than others. Phillies being very active, and of course the Atlanta Braves making a big splash signing Marcell Ozuna. But how about them Cubby Bears? Let's go to Cubscast. What's going on in Cubs world? Well, this past week, the center of the Cubs world was a convention center somewhere in the Chicagoland area. It was CubsCon, the Cubs convention. CubsCon, as usual, features lots of silliness, lots of shenanigans. For instance, eight of the same players were polled on a series of questions about their teammates, like, who would be most likely to be a movie star, and this and this and this. But my favorite question was, who could eat the most Chicago hot dogs, that's no ketchup, in one sitting? 4 guys said Schwarber, 4 guys said Rizzo, including Rizzo himself. So that's something I'd like to see. I'd like to see solved. I don't know where or when we could do that. Maybe next CubsCon, because that's not something I'd like to have in the middle of the season. But Schwarber versus Rizzo hot dog eating contest. Let's make it happen. And you know what? Add John Lester, because I feel like Lester, he can smash some dogs. CubsCon also featured a few panels hosted by Len and JD, which featured a lot of audience questions and a lot of boilerplate athlete answers, as I like to call them. Hard work, yada yada, tiptoeing around the actual question at hand. What can you do? What can you expect? There were some good takeaways from that. For instance, in the pitchers and catchers panel, Wilson Contreras provided some insight into how he deals with batters who are trying to look at the signs from inside the box. Yeah, kind of a funny story about Marcell Ozuna. How convenient. Apparently Ozuna, when he was with the Cardinals, stepped into the box, and him and Contreras were chirping each other a little bit, as catchers and batters sometimes do, and Ozuna asked Contreras to call a strike down the middle. So he did. Ozuna took it. And then he's like, call it again. So another heater down the middle, and Ozuna took it again, and he ended up striking out in that at bat, which I wish the Braves would have heard that before they signed him. What the fuck? Another interesting question from that panel was a kid asked, if you could play any other position at the same level as the one you play now, what would you pick? Willie said he'd like to be a closer, and I love that sort of attitude. A bunch of guys said shortstop, no surprise there. I think it was Kyle Hendricks, maybe Quintana, who said they want to be a center fielder. I thought that was kind of cool. And then the coaches panel was mostly centered around David Ross. No surprise, new manager, fan favorite. He's going to get the vast majority of questions. And my main takeaway from that is I'm warming up to Rossi. Yes, he's inexperienced. Yes, he's unproven. But in comparison to Madden, this guy has energy. This guy he just has a completely different vibe. When he talks, you want to listen to him. He's not old. He's young. He's blunt with a lot of his answers. And he's honest. There were some questions, you guys, like, yeah, I don't know who the leadoff hitter is. Or, listen, I'm new to this. I don't know a lot of things. That's why I have this coaching staff with me. And that sort of honesty, that sort of self-accountability plays in very well to this big meme that the Cubs organization is rolling with this offseason, and that is accountability. How do we get these talented players to actually account for themselves or be held accountable or make new accounts? I don't fucking know. How do we make them perform better? And from what I've heard and from now what I've seen of Ross, I think he has that in him. I think he's the kind of guy who would demand a lot from his players, and he would make that demand loud and clear. So I'm more excited going into this Ross era than I was prior to it, or when he was first hired. So yeah, we'll have to see. And on the rumor mill, the Cubs were reportedly interested in Jacoby Ellsbury. How about no? That guy's dead. And apparently they've also been asking about Nolan Arenado. Because why not? Money's an issue. Let's trade for Arenado. Jesus Christ. Well, the Rockies GM went out and said, yeah, he's not going to get traded. And that's after months of trade rumors swirling around Arenado. The man went out and said he felt disrespected by the trade rumors. Whatever. What fucking ever. The Cubs were not just dicking around at a convention center all week. No, Theo Epstein was busy making deals. Cubs signed some guys to some minor league deals. And in particular, they brought in 3 pitchers. Finally, the Cubs are on a roll, adding pitchers to the organization. They started this last week. They're keeping it rolling. And we'll see some familiar faces back in the system next season. For instance, Danny Holtzen. Oh boy. This guy, I love his career because it's just been such a shit show. So Holtzen was drafted 2nd overall in 2011 by the Mariners. Safe to say, very highly regarded prospect. In his early years in the minors, he struggled with control big time. For instance, in 2012, in AAA, he walked 43 batters in 48 2/3 innings. But there was clearly something there, and in fact, in 2013, he actually turned in a very good season in the minors, split between AAA and rookie ball. But he threw just 35 plus that year. Why? Injuries started to happen, and a lot of injuries hit old Danny Holtzen. I'm talking a shoulder injury. That was followed by a surgery to repair a torn labrum and rotator cuff. That caused him to miss the entire 2014 season. He came back in 2015, threw 8 innings in AA. Got hurt again. 2016, started to come back. He's now in rookie ball, rehabbing. he hurt himself again. He got surgery again. He missed the entire 2017 season. In the span of 4 years, Holtzen threw a grand total of 10 innings. And while he was sitting out the 2017 season, he actually finished his university degree, so respect to him. He ended up signing a minor league. We ended up signing a minor league deal with the Cubs after that. Threw around the minors a bit in 2018. Grand total 8 2/3 innings. Last season, Holtzen finally made his major league debut, throwing 3 1/3 for the Cubs. Finally. And he also threw 14 1/3 innings in AAA Iowa. And that was the most innings he's thrown in a year since 2013. Incredible. Holtzen is a high strikeout, high walk kind of guy. Last year in AAA, as I said, 14 plus innings, 23 punch-outs, 9 walks. Managed to keep the ERA low. Didn't allow a lot of hits. He allowed just 4 hits. I think there's something to be intrigued about in regards to Holtzen. Apparently, he can still throw the ball at about 94 miles an hour. So I'd love to see this guy finally earn a long-term spot on a big league team, just considering his story. And as far as the Cubs, if he can strike out guys like he's been striking out guys, let him rip. And speaking of strikeout artists, the Cubs also landed a minor league deal with Rex Brothers. I love this guy's name, first and foremost. Another lefty. He has a lot more major league experience than Holtzen. Spent several years with the Rockies, where he was actually a good reliever, but in the past few years has kind of fallen off a cliff. He missed all of 2016 due to injury, and then over the past 3 seasons, Brothers has thrown just 23 2/3 of the major league level and has not been very successful in terms of that. Last year, didn't pitch in the majors at all. He was in the Yankees organization, threw in AAA, 45 plus innings, ERA just under 5, whip about 1.6. As I said, strikeout and walk numbers through the roof. And that's pretty normal as far as his recent work. Brothers, oh brother, 48 plus innings across minor league levels, 37 walks, and 88 strikeouts. Oh my gosh. Could you imagine Brothers, Holtzen, and Dylan Maples in the same bullpen? Like, this is insane. This is absolute insanity. Well, on a better note, the Cubs did trade a player to be named later / cash considerations for a young right-hander by the name of Travis Lakins, who made his major league debut last season for the Red Sox. Threw 23 plus, mostly out of the pen with a few starts. 3.86 ERA, 3.64 FIP, but a 7-4 strikeout to walk ratio. Apparently his curveball is very good. Apparently his fastball is very good. Didn't do as well in AAA, but has previously been ranked as high as 15 in the Red Sox minor league system. So actually a little more promising than Holtzen or Brothers is this Travis Lakins character. So I actually do like this addition. Theo wasn't done there yet. No. Noel Cuevas, an outfielder. The Cubs also signed to a minor league deal. Why not? Let's add another outfielder. Why not? Cuevas spent the last 2 seasons with the Rockies. Appeared in 76 big league games. 230 hitter. 265 on base. Jesus Christ. I don't really care much, but I gotta report it anyway. That about does it for Cubscast. Yeah, CubsCon and some pitchers added to the system, which I do like. But the big news of this past week, apart from the Ozuna signing, was Hall of Fame. The Baseball Hall of Fame balloting went down. Oh yes, the esteemed writers of the Baseball Writers Association of America casted their ballots. Fuck the writers. And I say that as somebody who wants to be a writer. Well, 2 players were inducted into Cooperstown, one of whom, absolutely no surprises here, Derek Jeter, first time on the ballot. Of course he's going to get in. The big question with Jeter was, in fact, is he going to be a unanimous selection? Because for years and years and decades, there seems to be one of those many unwritten rules that nobody could get into the Hall unanimously. Because if Willie Mays and Babe Ruth and these other guys couldn't get in unanimously, nobody should. But then Mariano Rivera happened. He managed to get in unanimously, and people were like, hey, Jeter, a teammate of Rivera, also a key part of that Yankees dynasty. Should he get in unanimously? Almost. There was one guy who didn't vote for Jeets, and the contrarian in me is just beaming with respect, because that is hilarious. Well, we all know about Jeter. Let's give him a run through anyway. 20-year MLB career, all with the Yankees. He's got 3,465 career hits, which is pretty impressive. To go with a .310 career batting average, .377 career on base. Man's a 14-time All-Star, 5-time Gold Glover, 5-time Silver Slugger, Rookie of the Year. Somehow he's never won the MVP award, but who cares? It's freaking Jeter. I'd say the most overrated player of the 21st century so far. And you know what? It kind of makes sense. Because Jeter, listen, he's marketable. He's racially ambiguous enough to appeal to every demographic. He's not a bad-looking guy, and his endorsement deals are a testament of that. He was on multiple video game covers. He was a part of the Yankees, duh. A dynastic Yankees team at that. He was good. He was very consistent as a player, too. I have to give him that. And he played during the steroid era, where Major League Baseball was kind of hit by a crisis, especially towards the end of Jeter's career in sort of the late 2000s, early 2010s, where it's like, shit, we just spent like 15 years, and all our star players from that era took steroids. What do we do? Well, we have Derek Jeter. So, as you remember, 2014, his last season, was just a dick ride. Hashtag retupect. Do you know that Derek Jeter's retiring? Did you hear about that? Jesus Christ. I'm glad that's over. I'm glad he's inducted. We don't have to hear about this ever again. Let him fuck around with the Marlins for as long as he wants to. And, more notably, in my opinion, Maple Ridge's very own Larry Walker is going to Cooperstown. Yes, the second Canadian to be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame on his 10th and last year on the ballot. I'm happy about this. I love it. You know what? When I started watching baseball, Larry Walker was already a veteran. I missed out on the glory days of Walker, but he was still a very good player till then. Like a lot of Hall of Famers, very consistent career, where even in his age 38th season, he was still hitting .289 with a .384 on base and a .500 slugging percentage. You gotta love it. Larry Walker, a 17-year veteran, 5-time All-Star, 7-time Gold Glover, 3-time Silver Slugger, 3 times he's won the Major League batting title. He was the 1997 NL MVP. Just a great player. And again, this was during the steroid era. But this guy was going out there and he was smashing balls not because of performance-enhancing drugs, but because he's the descendant of lumberjacks. That guy's got a freaking build. He had the mullet. It was sick. Spent most of his career, 10 years with the Rockies, meaning he's going to be the first player representing the Colorado Rockies to be enshrined. So I think that's pretty cool. And you got to give a shout out to his first 6 years of his career when he was a Montreal Expo. I know his best years were with the Rockies, but he was a member of that cursed 1994 Expos team. He was one of their key players. Much respect to Larry Walker. You probably saw his SpongeBob shirt when he got inducted. Making the province proud. He got in with 76.6% of the vote, which crosses the 75% threshold. But who rounded out the top 5? Well, it's a few names who have a little bit of controversy around them. And I'm mentioning them because, generally speaking, who's ever finishing just below that threshold is probably going to see a rise in votes the next season. And if they're high enough, they're probably going to the Hall next year. Number 3, Curt Schilling with 70% of the vote. Number 4, Roger Clemens, 61%. And number 5, the Harbinger, the Leviathan, Barry Bonds, 60.7%. All these guys are coming off their 8th year of balloting. So even if they don't get in next year, 2022, they're all going to be in their final year. And when it's that final year, there's a lot of pressure on the writers to get these guys in. Kind of like what happened to Walker this season. That's going to be insane. If Schilling, Clemens, and Bonds all get in the same year, or if there's just the pressure to get them in. Because baseball writers are as sanctimonious as they come. These guys are the gatekeepers of Cooperstown. They take themselves very seriously. Curt Schilling, I mean, he said that journalists should be hanged. I could understand why he hasn't been let in, even beyond his social media comments. And I'm sure baseball is keen to avoid drawing in the culture warriors and the Twitterati and everybody who's just takes their offensibility and just turns it up to 11. Bringing in Schilling would piss a lot of people off, but stats-wise, he has the numbers to back it up. He has the resume. And listen, there's a lot of scumbags in the hall as it is. Who gives a fuck? Let Schilling in. Let Clemens and Bonds in, because as far as the steroid era goes, those guys were just on a completely different level. Like you look at their stat sheets, and it's like, yo, Bonds, one of the best hitters of all time, definitely the best power hitter of all time. Clemens, one of the best pitchers of all time. So I think it's just a matter of time for these guys to get in. And really, if they don't, because I could see the baseball writers being like, okay, we do not want to let anybody with steroids come in. Who would they all transfer their votes to? For some reason, Omar Vizquel has polled over 50%. That kind of surprises me. I mean, Vizquel, I appreciate the longevity. I respect his game defensively. But he was never exactly a very good hitter. And was never really all that above average all in all. So that'd be kind of weird. I'd love to see Scott Rowland get in. He finished 7th this season. He was a very good all-around player. Sammy Sosa languishing down to number 14. He had just under 14% of the vote. Unfortunately, Slam and Sammy might not get into the hall. Who knows? Maybe you have to get these guys off the ballot and wait till the Veterans Committee. But I would be watching Hall of Fame balloting for the next 2 seasons because it's going to be some big names with a lot of controversy might be coming in. Well, allow me to just take a look 2021, who's going to be a newcomer on the ballot to see if we have any shoo-ins who could usurp Schilling, Clemens, and Bonds. And not really. Honestly, not really. Barry Zito, Mark Burley, Tim Hudson. Good pitchers, but Hall of Famers, I don't know. Torrey Hunter, I don't think so. Aramis Ramirez, shout out to him, but yeah, probably not. But yeah, 2022, it's going to be a year of reckoning, because if these guys are left out the ballot for another year, I'm curious to see what will transpire. Well, that about does it for the Stoveminders Cubscast for this 3rd week of January 2020. Baseball season's just around the corner. Still a few moves to go down, so don't let up on that stove just yet. And I'm cooking up some filler content just in case it gets really, really slow. So don't you worry. For now, Stoveminders, stay vigilant and stay dry.